Hi everyone, welcome to Mr. Wagid's math class. The last 3 lessons, we talked about solving simple equations, multi-step equations, and equations with variables on both sides using inverse operation. Today, we will learn how to rewrite literal equations using also inverse operations. So what are literal equations? They are equations that includes more than one kind of variable, such as 3x minus 5y equals 36. This equation has 2 different variables, x and y. Or this formula to find the volume of a cylinder, V equals pi r squared h. The variables are v, r, and h. Pi is not a variable. Pi is a number, we know what it is, it's 3.14. But the variables are the v, the r, and the h. So to rewrite literal equations means to solve for one kind of variable in terms of the other variables. And for you to remember, to solve for a variable, it means to isolate the variable to one side of the equation. Let's see how this works. Okay, now let's practice rewriting this formula. V equals pi r squared h. Solve the equation for h, which means isolate h to one side of the equation using also inverse operation, what we learned before. So you have v equals pi r squared h. There's nothing between pi r squared because they're on the same side of the equation as the h. I need to get rid of the pi r squared. For me to know what operation is that, put a dot there, which means multiply. So you're multiplying pi r squared times the height, or h. Now to undo multiplication, use the inverse operation, which is division. And remember, use the fraction bar on both sides and divide pi r squared, divide pi r squared. Now pi divided by pi is 1. R squared divided by r squared is 1. Any number divided by itself is equal to 1. You left with 1 times h equals h. Bring the h down, bring the equal sign down, and bring v divided by pi r squared down. You can't simplify that. There's nothing to simplify. Mission accomplished. We isolated h to one side of the equation in terms of the other variables. Okay, now let's practice solving this equation for y. You have 3x plus 1/5 y equals 7. To solve for y means to isolate y on one side of the equation in terms of the other variables or numbers in this equation. So which term to get rid of first? You have 3x and you have the coefficient 1/5. You always get rid of the mixed term 3x. And since we're adding 3x, the inverse operation would be subtracting 3x from both sides of the equation. Now 3x minus 3x is 0. Bring the plus down. Bring 1/5 y down. Bring the equal sign down. And then 7 minus 3x. Can I combine those terms? You can't. You can't subtract 7 minus 3 because they're not like terms. So what do? You just bring the whole thing down. You bring the 7 down and you bring minus 3x down. Now let's simplify that. 0 plus 1/5 y equals 1/5 y. Bring the equal sign down. 7 minus 3x. Bring it down. And now I need to get rid of the 1/5 or the fraction 1/5. It's a coefficient. To get rid of the coefficient, if it's a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal, which is flip the fraction. Any number times the reciprocal equals 1. So multiply by 5/1 on this side and multiply by 5/1 on the other side. But I'm not just multiplying 7, I'm multiplying 7 and 3x. So put 7 minus 3x in parentheses. This way you have to use the distributive property. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 1 times y is y, so bring the y down. Bring the equal sign down. Now 5 times 7 is 35. And 5 times 3 is 15x. Of course, bring the minus down. Now you isolated y on one side of the equation in terms of the other variables and numbers in the equation. Now let's solve the equations for the red variable. Look at number 1. It's 6y minus 1.5x equals 8. And the red variable is y, so this time we are solving for y. That means I need to isolate y on one side of the equation. So which term to get rid of first? Always the mixed term. And I have 1.5x is a mixed term. Subtracting 1.5x, the inverse operation will be adding 1.5x on this side and add 1.5x on the other side. Now 6y, you bring it down, and negative 1.5 plus 1.5 is 0. 0 times x is 0, and 0 plus 6y is 6y. Bring the equals down, sign down. 8 plus 1.5, I can't add them because they're not like terms, so all you do is bring them down. 8 plus 1.5x. Now, y is not by itself, it has the coefficient 6, which means you multiplying 6 times y, and the inverse operation would be dividing by 6, but pay attention that you need to divide every term on the other side by 6. So you divide this by 6, and you divide this by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. You end up with y equals 8 divided by 6 is 1.33 plus 1.5 divided by 6 is 0.25, and do not forget the x. Now it's isolated, y is isolated, it's on one side of the equation by itself. Now the second one, I need to isolate w. This is the letter or the variable that's in red. Since there's fraction, I would multiply by the reciprocal to get rid of that 1 over 6. So multiply by 6 over 1 and multiply by 6 over 1 on both sides. Cross divide, 6 divided by 6 is 1. So what you're left with, 1 times w and 1 times 40. So 1 times w is w plus 1 times 40 is 40 equals 6 times g is 6g. Now I need w by itself. I get rid of 40. The operation is addition. To undo addition, you subtract 40 from this side, subtract 40 from this side. 40 minus 40 is 0. Bring w down equals 6 minus 40. I can't do that because they're not like terms. This is a coefficient and this is a constant. So what do? Just bring them down. 6g minus 40. Mission accomplished. W is isolated on one side of the equation. That's it for today's lesson. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.